Lyra had always chosen solitude. For years, she had lived alone on the barren exoplanet of Vera 9, far from human colonies, far from the constant noise of civilization. Her small outpost perched on a rocky cliff, overlooking valleys where alien plants shimmered faintly under the twin suns. Here, Lyra studied life in its purest, most untouched form. She observed, recorded, and learned. No one interrupted her routines. No one questioned her decisions. No one asked for her time, and she had grown to love it. Each morning, she would rise with the first pale light, checking her hydroponic labs, monitoring the weather drones, and collecting samples of the planet's peculiar flora. The native plants were strange yet elegant. Some glowed faintly in the dark. Others twisted toward the air currents as if dancing. Life here thrived quietly, without interference. And so did she. Lyra had built her life carefully. Her schedules were precise, her food stocks managed to perfection, her communications limited to occasional messages to Earth, most of which she rarely read. Friends and colleagues had long since stopped writing, assuming she preferred this solitude. And she did. She was content in the quiet, with only the hum of machines and the soft, alien rustle of the wind through her observation fields. But life, Lyra realized, was never truly predictable. It was during the fading light of one twin sunset evening that she saw them. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, the reflection of the golden sun on the rocks, forming a human-shaped shadow. But then the shape moved, and then she saw it clearly, a figure trudging along the ridge, holding something small in their arms. Her heart skipped. She had not seen another human in over 5 years. She hesitated, unsure whether to approach or retreat. The figure stopped halfway, shielding the small bundle with their coat. The winds here were harsh, and the terrain was unforgiving. Yet they moved with determination, despite the weight they carried. Lyra's training as a scientist kicked in. Whoever they were human. And that was enough to make her cautious. She grabbed her communicator, preparing to warn them off, when a small voice called out, "Please, may we stay just one night?" Lyra froze. The voice was soft, almost fragile. She looked closer and saw the infant cradled in the stranger's arms, a tiny human face peeking out, blinking under the fading light. The baby's expression was calm, almost unnervingly so, as if it already understood the danger of the world around them. Lyra studied the stranger, noting the dirt and exhaustion etched into their face. Their clothes were worn, patched with various fabrics, as if they had traveled for days without proper rest. The figure looked at her with quiet desperation, the infant pressed against their chest. She could have refused. She could have sent them on their way, told them this was private property, and returned to her life of quiet study. But something about the scene stirred, something she had long suppressed, the part of her that remembered compassion, empathy, and human connection. "Come in," she said finally, her voice firm but gentle. "Just stay close. The storms here come fast." The stranger's relief was immediate. They nodded, carefully navigating the jagged rocks and sliding sands until they reached her small outpost. Lyra watched them closely as they entered, noting the exhaustion in their movements, the care with which they shielded the infant. She gestured toward the main room, and the stranger, who she would soon learn was named Kellen, moved to follow. The room smelled faintly of metal and water, with the subtle hint of the alien plants that Lyra kept on every surface. The stranger placed the infant on a small cushioned area, where the baby immediately curled up, making small, contented coos. Lyra studied them both. "You are far from home," she said softly. Kellen nodded. We had nowhere else to go. I didn't know if anyone would help." Lyra felt a twinge in her chest. She remembered her own early days here. The loneliness that had seemed unbearable until she filled it with study and routine. She had thought she had left human need behind, but now she realized that even she was not immune. "Stay here tonight," she said. "I'll make some food. Tomorrow, we can figure out what to do." Kellen's shoulders relaxed. "Thank you. Truly." The night fell quickly, and Lyra busied herself preparing a simple meal. It was strange, this act of domesticity. She had not cooked for anyone but herself in years. As she stirred the nutrient-rich stew, She listened to the soft hum of Kellen caring for the baby, murmuring gentle words she couldn't hear clearly. The sound was oddly soothing, a reminder that connection, even brief, could be grounding. After dinner, Lyra led them to the small sleeping area. The infant slept easily, protected by blankets and the gentle hum of Lyra's climate control systems. Kellen lingered by the door. Hesitant. "You should sleep," Lyra said. "You both need it. The planet is unpredictable at night." Kellen nodded slowly. "I'll try." As Lyra settled into her own room, she felt the familiar hum of the outpost around her. There was a new energy in the air, subtle but undeniable. A reminder that life was unpredictable, and sometimes beautiful, in ways she had long forgotten. The wind outside howled, rattling the windows, but inside, there was warmth. Lyra lay awake for hours, listening to the soft breathing of the stranger and the baby, considering how a single night could change everything. She had spent years in solitude, believing that was her choice, her safety. But now, she realized that even in isolation, humans could not escape the pull of connection, the quiet power of empathy. Morning light broke over the twin suns, spilling gold and violet across the cliffs. Lyra rose, checking the sensors and monitoring the infant's breathing. Mira, she had learned the baby's name during the night, was calm, curious eyes flicking toward the plants in the corner. Kellen was already awake, sitting quietly, watching the horizon. "You must be wondering why we came here," he said quietly. "It's complicated. But Mira, she's special. She can't stay in the colonies, they won't understand her." Lyra studied the child. There was something in Mira's gaze, something deep and quiet, as if she already sensed the world around her in ways adults could not. Lyra felt a chill of awe. This child was unlike anyone she had ever met. "I don't know what I can do," Lyra said. "But I can help. For now." Kellen smiled faintly. "That's all I ask. Just one night. Or, as long as you can manage." Lyra nodded, feeling the weight and the wonder of responsibility. She had chosen solitude for peace, for study, for control. But now, life had made a quiet, gentle intrusion. And perhaps, she thought, that was exactly what she needed. The morning stretched, warm and quiet. Birds or whatever passed for birds on Vera 9 called softly across the cliffs. Lyra prepared breakfast, sharing it with Kellen and Mira. They ate slowly, enjoying the first calm meal in what seemed like years. Mira's laughter rang out, delicate and musical, as she reached for the alien plants that decorated Lyra's outpost. Kellen watched, his exhaustion forgotten. Caught in the simple joy of the moment, Lyra couldn't help but smile. Perhaps solitude was not about being alone. Perhaps it was about finding the right moments of connection, brief though they might be, and allowing life to remind her why humans were remarkable. Outside, the twin suns rose higher, casting long shadows over the valley. Inside, a small trio sat together, quietly sharing warmth, food, and the beginnings of trust. And in that moment, Lyra realized that sometimes the universe brought people together, not by accident, but by subtle design, through storms, through exhaustion, through the quiet insistence of life itself. She had spent years in solitude. And now, for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of something she had thought lost: hope, curiosity, and the quiet thrill of human connection. And all it had taken was one night, one stranger, and a small, extraordinary child. The morning air on Vera 9 was crisp, carrying the scent of alien flora that shimmered faintly under the twin suns. Lyra moved carefully through her outpost, checking sensors and ensuring the life support systems were running smoothly. Kellen and Mira were already awake. The infant's soft humming filled the room, a sound that was both calming and oddly melodic. Lyra poured a cup of nutrient tea and handed it to Kellen, who accepted it with a tired smile. "Thank you for last night," he said. "I didn't know if anyone would." "Help," Lyra nodded. a quiet determination in her eyes. You're here now. That's enough for today. But I want to know why you brought her here. Why this planet? Kellen glanced at Mira, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, tracing patterns on the reflective metal tiles. The baby's eyes followed the sunlight as it moved across the room. There was something unusual in her gaze, a quiet awareness that seemed older than her age. Kellen sighed. She is different, he began. Mira isn't like other children. From the moment she was born, we realized she could sense things humans can't. We thought she might be able to understand life in ways we can't. And the colonies, they can't handle that. They would limit her. Lyra studied Mira closely. The baby turned her head toward her, blinking slowly, almost as if she could read Lyra's thoughts. A shiver ran down Lyra's spine. Something about Mira felt connected to the planet itself, as if she belonged here. What do you mean by limit? Lyra asked. Kellen shook his head. They would try to control her, teach her to suppress what she feels. But we can't do that. Not her. She's special, Lyra. Lyra nodded slowly, thinking about the possibilities. A child who could sense and perhaps communicate with alien life forms? It was the kind of discovery that could change everything humanity knew about life beyond Earth. But with discovery came responsibility. And responsibility required care, attention, and patience. Mira giggled softly, reaching out toward one of Lyra's small plants. The leaves shimmered as if reacting to her touch. Lyra's eyes widened. She leaned closer. Did you see that? Kellen followed her gaze. She's always done that. Plants, animals, sometimes even the air feels different around her. She reacts in ways we can't explain. Lyra swallowed, trying to keep her excitement contained. This was beyond any study she had ever conducted. Her mind raced with possibilities, communication, understanding ecosystems, even the potential to heal damaged environments. But she reminded herself to stay calm. Rushing in with excitement could frighten the child or make mistakes. The day passed slowly, filled with small discoveries. Lyra watched Mira move through the outpost, touching plants, tilting her head toward sensors, and sometimes quietly humming to herself. Each time she did, the instruments would pick up slight changes, temperature fluctuations, faint energy pulses, or subtle shifts in plant growth. Kellen stayed nearby, careful not to interfere, but ever watchful. She's learning fast, he said quietly. Faster than we expected, Lyra nodded. She felt a mix of awe and responsibility. We have to be careful. We can't overwhelm her. She's not just a child, she's something more. Something the planet seems to recognize. As evening approached, the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the valley. The sky glowed violet and gold, reflecting in the metallic walls of the outpost. Lyra and Kellen sat together, Mira between them, examining a small, luminescent plant that seemed to respond to the child's presence. She reacts to it, Lyra said softly. She's sensing it. In a way we can't measure, Kellen nodded. We noticed this even before we came here. She has an unusual connection with life. Sometimes it's calming. Sometimes it's powerful. We don't fully understand it yet. Lyra looked at Mira, who had grown quiet, her small hands hovering over the plant. For a moment, the room felt still, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. Then, slowly, the plant's leaves turned slightly toward Mira, shimmering brighter than before. The air felt warmer, lighter, filled with an almost imperceptible energy. Lyra's heart raced. This is incredible. If she can interact with life like this, she could teach us things we've never imagined. Kellen smiled faintly, a mix of pride and worry in his eyes. That's why we came here. She needs space, freedom, and guidance. And maybe you can help her understand herself. Lyra hesitated. She had always worked alone, relying on logic and observation. But now, she felt the stirrings of something different, something that required empathy and patience. She nodded slowly. "I'll help. For now. But we need to take it slowly. We can't rush her." The night deepened, bringing with it the soft hum of the planet's winds and the faint glow of distant auroras. Mira slept peacefully in the small bed between them, while Lyra and Kellen sat nearby, discussing plans for the days ahead. "You should rest," Kellen said. "You've been awake for hours." Lyra shook her head. "I can't. Not yet. There's too much to observe. Too much to understand. I need to see how she interacts with this environment. How the planet responds." Kellen nodded, understanding in his expression. "I'll stay with her. You take the sensors and recordings. Together, we'll learn." Hours passed, filled with quiet observations and careful notes. Mira stirred, her small hands reaching toward the walls and instruments. Each time she touched something, it changed, lights shifted, readings adjusted, plants leaned slightly toward her. Lyra's mind raced with the implications. This child could alter or communicate with ecosystems in ways humans had never dreamed of. When Mira finally fell asleep again, Kellen sighed softly. "She's exhausting, isn't she?" Lyra smiled faintly. "Exhausting. And remarkable. I haven't felt this kind of curiosity in years. Not like this." Kellen looked at her, his expression serious but gentle. "She's going to need more than curiosity. She's going to need guidance. She's going to need people who care about what she is, who understand her potential without trying to control it." Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. For the first time in years, she wasn't alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. She had a reason to watch, to teach, to protect, and somehow, that felt both frightening and exhilarating. The night passed quietly, with the twin moons rising and casting silver light across the valley. Lyra watched the stars through the observation window, thinking about the stranger and the child she had allowed into her life. She realized that sometimes the universe brought challenges in the form of people, and that those challenges were opportunities to grow, to learn, and to connect. When morning arrived, Lyra awoke to the soft sound of Mira's laughter echoing through the outpost. The infant was already awake, moving gracefully among the plants, her small hands glowing faintly as she reached toward the luminescent leaves. Lyra felt awe wash over her. Kellen approached her quietly. "She's happy here. She feels safe. That's what matters." Burr. 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 Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "She's more than safe," she said softly. "She's alive in ways we don't understand yet, and maybe she's here to teach us, as much as we're here to care for her." As the day stretched forward, Lyra and Kellen worked together, observing Mira's interactions, noting every subtle shift in the environment, and recording every movement. The planet seemed alive in a new way, responding to the child with gentle waves of energy that Lyra could barely measure but could feel in her chest. By evening, Lyra realized that the one night Kellen had asked for had already become something more profound. She had begun to see the world differently, to understand that life, human and alien alike, was not just about survival or study, but about connection, empathy, and the subtle ways beings could influence one another. And as Mira gazed out of the window, eyes wide with wonder at the alien landscape, Lyra felt a quiet certainty that this child, this mysterious, extraordinary child, was destined to change not just her life, but perhaps the lives of everyone who would one day meet her. For the first time, Lyra understood that the planet itself had chosen to welcome them, and that the journey ahead would not be solitary, but shared. And that realization filled her with a quiet, thrilling hope. The twin suns of Vera 9 had disappeared behind the jagged cliffs, leaving the valley bathed in the soft silver glow of the moons. Inside the outpost, Lyra moved quietly, checking the readings from her sensors. Every device she owned, temperature gauges, atmospheric scanners, plant health monitors had been calibrated to detect even the smallest changes in the alien environment. And tonight, something was different. Mira, the small child whose presence had already begun reshaping their understanding of the planet, sat cross-legged on the floor. She hummed softly, a delicate sound that seemed to echo in the room, almost as if the walls themselves were listening. Lyra watched closely. The faint glow of Mira's fingertips seemed to respond to the light from the twin moons, tracing invisible lines in the air. Kellen, who had been keeping a quiet watch nearby, whispered, "She's doing it again." Lyra leaned closer. "Doing what?" Kellen gestured toward the small alien plants in the corner. Their leaves, which had always moved subtly with the wind, now swayed as if guided by an unseen hand. Small pulses of bioluminescence ran along their stems in sync with Mira's humming. Lyra's breath caught. She had studied these plants for years, and they had never behaved like this. "She's interacting with them," Kellen said softly. "I've seen it before, but never this strong. She's connecting with life here, really connecting." Lyra felt a thrill run through her. This was beyond anything she had imagined. Mira was not merely observing the world. She was part of it. The planet responded to her presence in ways Lyra could not yet quantify. It was as if Mira carried a quiet power, subtle but profound, that allowed her to communicate with the living ecosystem without words. The night deepened, and outside, the wind whispered across the cliffs. Lyra stepped closer to the window, glancing at the alien horizon. The faint auroras in the sky shimmered brighter as Mira continued her soft humming. It was impossible, yet undeniable. The child's presence influenced even the larger environment beyond the outpost walls. Lyra returned to her observation deck, gathering her instruments to record the phenomena. Every reading was unusual: plants growing faster, atmospheric particles moving in gentle waves, even tiny flashes of light appearing in the valley far below. She glanced at Kellen, who watched her with a mix of wonder and caution. "We should document this carefully," Lyra said. "We need to understand her connection. She's showing us something incredible." Kellen nodded. "I agree. But remember, she's still a child. We can't overwhelm her. Observation is important, but care comes first." Lyra smiled faintly. "Care and curiosity, both in balance. I haven't felt like this in years." As they spoke, Mira's humming shifted in tone, becoming almost musical. The plants around her responded, their leaves twisting toward her hands in a slow, mesmerizing dance. Lyra's instruments recorded subtle energy waves radiating outward from the child. Even the air seemed to vibrate with gentle pulses, like a heartbeat synchronized with her own. "This is more than interaction," Lyra whispered. "She's sensing the energy of the planet itself and responding to it." Kellen knelt beside her. "I've wondered if she could do this intentionally. Perhaps she knows, in her own way, how to communicate with living things." Lyra nodded slowly, a mix of awe and apprehension in her eyes. "If she can guide ecosystems, influence life, we could learn so much. But we have to be careful. This is uncharted territory." Mira's small face turned toward them, her wide eyes reflecting the gentle light. She reached out toward a small, glowing plant that Lyra had been monitoring for weeks. The leaves shimmered brightly, almost like they were smiling in response. The child's fingers hovered over the plant, and a faint glow radiated from her touch, spreading through the stems and petals. Lyra and Kellen exchanged astonished glances. "She's glowing," Kellen whispered. "But not just with light. Something else. Something alive." Lyra's mind raced. If Mira's presence could influence plant growth and even light emissions, perhaps her abilities extended beyond observation. Could she accelerate development, heal damaged tissue, or even communicate with other life forms in the valley? The implications were staggering. As if sensing Lyra's thoughts, Mira tilted her head and giggled softly. Her small hands moved in the air, and the plants responded in kind, twisting and glowing as if performing a delicate dance. Lyra's heart swelled with excitement. The child's abilities were not a threat. They were a bridge between humanity and the alien life she had devoted herself to studying. Hours passed in quiet observation. Lyra and Kellen recorded every movement, every pulse of energy, every subtle shift in the environment. Mira's interactions were gentle, thoughtful, almost playful, yet undeniably powerful. Even the instruments that had once been perfectly still now registered constant fluctuations. The outpost seemed alive in a new way, illuminated by the soft glow of the plants and the child's subtle influence. Finally, Lyra stepped back, exhausted but exhilarated. This changes everything," she said softly. "She's teaching us a way to connect with life we've never known." Kellen nodded. "We've always studied life as observers. But she participates. She is life." The night stretched onward, and the twins' moons cast silver shadows across the floor. Mira yawned, curling up beside Kellen, her small fingers still glowing faintly. Lyra knelt beside them, feeling a quiet sense of peace. For years, she had believed that solitude was the path to understanding. But tonight, she realized that connection, the gentle, patient, and caring connection, was just as essential. Lyra moved to the window once more, gazing at the valley below. The plants in the distance swayed gently, glowing faintly in response to Mira's presence. The auroras above shimmered brighter than before, as if the planet itself were aware of the small human in its midst. She felt a thrill unlike any she had experienced in years. The knowledge that life, no matter how alien or human, could communicate in ways beyond words, beyond logic. Kellen approached quietly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Do you think she understands what she's doing?" he asked. Lyra shook her head slowly. "I don't know. Maybe not fully. But she senses it. She reacts to it. And that's enough. Sometimes understanding comes later. What matters now is the connection." The wind outside whispered through the cliffs, carrying a faint, musical tone that seemed to echo Mira's humming. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the subtle vibrations in her chest, the gentle warmth that radiated from the child, the plants, and the room itself. It was as if the planet and the child were communicating in a language only they could understand, a language of energy, light, and life. Hours passed, and dawn began to approach, casting soft violet and gold hues across the valley. Mira stirred, stretching her small arms, and the plants around her responded with a subtle glow. Lyra and Kellen watched quietly, sharing a look of wonder. "She's going to grow into something extraordinary," Kellen said softly. "I can feel it, but she needs guidance, love, patience." Lyra nodded, understanding the truth of his words. "And she'll have it. As long as we are here, we will help her understand herself and the world around her." The sun rose slowly, twin beams of light reflecting off the metallic surfaces of the outpost. Mira's laughter rang out, small and musical, as she explored the room, touching the plants, tracing patterns on the walls, and humming softly to herself. Lyra felt a quiet joy she hadn't known in years. For the first time, solitude was no longer loneliness. It was the calm before a shared journey of discovery. She realized that life had a way of surprising even the most cautious of hearts. A child, a stranger, and a remote planet had changed everything she had thought she knew about connection, curiosity, and the power of humanity. Lyra watched Mira carefully, her mind alive with possibilities. If the child could influence life here, what else could she do? Could she guide humans to understand alien ecosystems in ways previously impossible? Could she teach humanity a new way to connect with the universe itself? The day stretched forward, filled with gentle discoveries. Mira's laughter, Kellen's quiet guidance, and the planet's soft, shimmering response created a symphony of life that Lyra had never imagined. And she knew, with a quiet certainty, that the journey ahead would be extraordinary. For tonight had shown her something essential. Humanity's greatest strength was not in isolation, not in domination, but in understanding, empathy, and the willingness to connect with life in all its forms. And Mira, small and extraordinary, was teaching them exactly that. As the twin suns climbed higher, Lyra felt the first sparks of anticipation for what was to come. Mira's abilities were just beginning to emerge, and the planet's secrets were waiting to be revealed. Together, they would explore, learn, and grow, ushering in a new chapter of discovery and wonder. And for the first time in years, Lyra felt truly alive. The morning sun of Vera 9 spilled gold and violet across the cliffs, illuminating the outpost in a soft, otherworldly light. Lyra stood by the observation window, her eyes tracing the shimmer of alien plants below. Mira, the extraordinary child, sat nearby, quietly touching the glowing leaves that seemed to respond to her presence. Kellen watched from the corner, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. For days, they had observed Mira's interactions with the planet. Each movement, each touch, each soft hum from her tiny lips seemed to ripple through the environment. Plants grew subtly faster when she approached. Small insects gathered near her fingers, buzzing softly. And even the wind seemed to change direction, as if carrying her quiet energy across the valley. Lyra felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. She had devoted years to understanding life scientifically, relying on careful measurements and data. But Mira was something different. She defied conventional explanations, connecting with the planet in ways that were both beautiful and incomprehensible. "Mira," Lyra whispered, kneeling beside the child. "Do you know what you're doing?" The child tilted her head, her wide eyes reflecting the sunlight. She giggled softly, her tiny hands brushing over a cluster of bioluminescent plants. The plants glowed brighter, pulsating in rhythm with her humming. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. "She understands more than we think," Kellen said quietly. "More than anyone. Sometimes I wonder if she knows the planet as well as we know ourselves." Lyra nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words. The realization was both thrilling and intimidating. Mira was not just interacting with life, she was guiding it, influencing it, forming connections that humans could barely comprehend. The implications were staggering. For hours, they observed the child. Mira moved through the outpost with delicate precision, touching plants, tilting her head toward sensors, and humming softly. The instruments recorded subtle shifts, temperature changes, energy pulses, growth acceleration, all in response to her presence. Lyra's mind raced. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a revelation about humanity itself. "Mira," Lyra said softly, reaching out to the child. "You can do incredible things. But you also need to understand yourself. You need guidance." The child looked at her, blinking slowly, as if absorbing every word. The connection was undeniable. Lyra realized that Mira's abilities were a gift. But gifts required careful nurturing, and she felt a deep responsibility settle over her. Kellen stepped closer. "We've kept her hidden for a reason. Many would not understand her. They would try to control her, to use her. We can't let that happen." Lyra nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We won't. But we also have to decide what's best for her. We can't shelter her forever. She needs to explore, to learn, to grow. And that may mean leaving this place eventually." Kellen's eyes softened, but concern remained. Leaving could be dangerous. The world isn't ready for her yet. But staying here forever might limit her potential. Lyra looked at Mira, who had grown quiet, her small hands hovering over a glowing plant. The child's presence seemed to calm the environment, as if the planet itself recognized her importance. Lyra felt a surge of awe. She had spent years studying life in isolation, believing that control and observation were enough. But now, she realized that life and humanity thrived on connection, empathy, and understanding. "We'll teach her," Lyra said softly. "We'll guide her carefully. And when the time comes, We'll help her step into the world, prepared for what's ahead. The day passed slowly, filled with gentle discoveries. Mira's abilities became more apparent, subtle yet undeniable. She could influence plant growth, communicate with small creatures, and even sense shifts in the environment before they occurred. Lyra and Kellen recorded every moment, careful not to overwhelm the child, while marveling at the growing bond between them. As evening approached, a gentle storm began to form in the distant valley. The winds whispered softly, carrying faint electric charges that made the plants shimmer even more brightly. Mira laughed, small fingers reaching toward the glowing leaves as if coaxing them to dance. Lyra felt a thrill of amazement. The child was not just interacting with life, she was harmonizing with it. Kellen knelt beside Lyra, his expression thoughtful. "She's going to change everything," he said quietly. "Humanity, the colonies, the way we understand life. But she's still a child, and she needs us to help her grow safely." Lyra nodded. "I know, and that's why we have to make choices, careful ones. We can't hold her back, but we also can't push her too far. We have to find the balance." The storm outside intensified, sending waves of shimmering light across the cliffs. Mira's laughter continued, blending with the soft hum of the wind. Lyra felt a sense of wonder she had not experienced in years. Here was a child, small, yet extraordinary, shaping the world around her with quiet grace, and Lyra knew that her own life would never be the same. As the night deepened, Lyra and Kellen sat together, watching Mira sleep peacefully. The room was filled with a gentle glow, a testament to the child's influence on her surroundings. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Mira could teach humanity to understand life in ways previously unimaginable. She could guide humans to live in harmony with the environment, to connect with ecosystems, and perhaps even heal the damage humans had caused elsewhere. But with potential came responsibility. Lyra knew that the decisions they made now would shape Mira's future. They could not allow fear, control, or isolation to dictate her path. She needed freedom, guidance, and the ability to explore her abilities safely. "Kellen," Lyra whispered, her voice soft but firm, "we have to trust her. Trust that she will learn, grow, and make choices for herself. We can guide her, but we can't decide everything for her." Kellen nodded slowly. "I understand. But it's hard. I've spent so long protecting her. I don't know if the world is ready for her yet." Lyra reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll protect her, yes. But we'll also teach her to protect herself. She's stronger than we realize. And the planet, it's guiding her. She's not alone." The night passed in quiet reflection. Lyra stayed awake for hours, watching Mira sleep, feeling the gentle hum of the planet's energy through the outpost. The child's abilities were a bridge between humanity and life itself. And Lyra realized that her role was not to control that bridge, but to support it, nurture it, and ensure it grew safely. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the valley bathed in the soft light of dawn. Mira stirred, her small hands reaching toward the glowing plants. Lyra and Kellen watched quietly, sharing a look of understanding. The child's journey was just beginning, and they would walk it with her, guiding her through discovery, wonder, and the responsibilities of her extraordinary abilities. Lyra felt a sense of clarity she had not known in years. She had spent her life in solitude, believing that independence and control were the keys to understanding. But now she understood the truth. Humanity's greatest strength lay in connection, empathy, and the willingness to guide and nurture one another. And Mira, small, radiant, extraordinary Mira, was teaching them all exactly that. The day stretched forward, filled with gentle exploration and observation. Mira's abilities became more pronounced, subtle yet undeniable. Plants responded to her touch. Small creatures gathered near her, and even the atmosphere seemed to shimmer with her quiet energy. Lyra recorded every moment, careful not to overwhelm the child, while marveling at the growing bond between them. As evening approached, the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the cliffs. Mira sat quietly, her small fingers glowing faintly as she traced patterns in the air. Lyra and Kellen watched, filled with awe and wonder. The child was extraordinary, a living bridge between humanity and the alien world around her. And as Lyra observed her, she knew that their choices in the coming days would shape not only Mira's future, but perhaps the future of humanity itself. The path ahead was uncertain, but filled with promise, wonder, and the quiet power of connection. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a profound sense of purpose. Solitude had taught her discipline, observation, and patience. But connection, guiding, nurturing, and understanding was teaching her something far greater. Mira had come into their lives unexpectedly, a small child with the power to change the world. And now, Lyra knew, they had to make choices that honored her potential, protected her innocence, and prepared her for the extraordinary journey ahead. The planet shimmered softly in the dawn light, as if acknowledging the weight of the moment. And Lyra, watching the child she had come to love and respect, understood that the most important discoveries were not in the data, the instruments, or even the stars, but in the quiet, shared moments of understanding, trust, and hope. And so, with careful thought, patience, and unwavering empathy, they prepared for the days ahead, knowing that Mira's journey was just beginning, and that together, they could navigate the wonders and mysteries of a universe far greater than themselves. The morning on Vera 9 was calm, bathed in the soft glow of twin suns rising over jagged cliffs. The outpost was quiet, except for the gentle hum of equipment, and Mira's small laughter as she explored the plants that shimmered in response to her touch. Lyra watched her from the observation window, a mixture of awe and melancholy filling her chest. For days, Mira had continued to reveal her extraordinary abilities. She could influence plant growth with a gentle touch, communicate in subtle ways with the creatures of the valley, and even sense the rhythms of the planet's energy. It was no longer a quiet curiosity, she was an undeniable force of life, a bridge between humanity and the alien world they had come to cherish. Kellen approached Lyra, carrying a small datapad filled with observations they had recorded together. "We've documented everything," he said softly. "Every interaction, every subtle change. The colonies need to see this, to understand her potential. But we also have to be careful. The world isn't ready for her yet." Lyra nodded. "I know. But keeping her here forever isn't right either. She needs to learn, to grow, to explore. And that means leaving eventually." Kellen looked toward Mira, who was sitting quietly, her small hands glowing faintly as she traced the leaves of a bioluminescent plant. The child seemed aware of their conversation, her gaze calm yet knowing. Lyra felt a pang in her heart. The bond they had formed over these days was profound, and the thought of letting Mira go weighed heavily on her. "She's ready," Lyra said softly. "We've guided her. She understands more than we realized. And the planet, it's preparing her, too. It's given her the ability to connect, to sense, to guide. Now it's our choice to let her use that gift beyond this place." Kellen nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I've spent so long protecting her. It's hard to let go." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're not letting go. We're giving her the chance to shine, to fulfill her potential. And we'll always be here for her, in whatever way she needs." The day passed with quiet preparation. Lyra and Kellen reviewed their data, organized supplies, and ensured the outpost was ready for Mira's next journey. The child, ever curious, moved among them, humming softly as she interacted with the plants and small creatures. Her abilities had grown, subtle yet undeniable. Each time she touched a plant, it responded instantly, glowing and swaying as if in recognition of her presence. The air itself seemed to shimmer around her, gentle waves of energy radiating from her small body. By afternoon, a sleek, solar-powered shuttle arrived from Kellen's colony, designed to carry them safely across the distant star systems. The technology was advanced but harmonious with life, reflecting Mira's gentle influence on the world. She watched the shuttle with wide eyes, her small hands reaching out as if sensing its purpose. Lyra knelt beside her. "This will take you to places you've never been," she said softly. "It's time for you to explore, to learn, to share what you've discovered. But remember, no matter where you go, we are with you in spirit." Mira blinked, her gaze steady, and reached out toward Lyra's hand. Lyra held her tiny fingers, feeling a quiet warmth spread through her chest. It was a bond, forged through discovery, care, and trust, a bond that distance could never break. Kellen stepped forward. "Ready?" he asked gently. Mira nodded, her small face serene, as if she already understood the importance of this journey. Lyra felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. The child they had nurtured, guided, and loved was ready to step into the wider universe. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as it powered up. Mira stepped inside, carefully guided by Kellen. Lyra followed, carrying the final data pads and supplies. The outpost, their home for so long, felt quiet, almost still, as if the planet itself recognized the significance of the moment. Inside the shuttle, Mira touched the small plants and creatures that had been brought along for comfort. Her glowing fingertips traced patterns in the air, and the plants responded instantly, leaves pulsing gently in harmony with her energy. The shuttle itself seemed to resonate with her presence, as if acknowledging the unique connection she shared with life. Lyra and Kellen watched her, feeling a profound sense of awe. The child was extraordinary not just in her abilities, but in her quiet courage, her empathy, and her understanding of the world around her. She was a reminder that humanity's greatest strength lay not in power or control, but in connection, understanding, and the willingness to nurture life wherever it existed. As the shuttle lifted off, the valley below shimmered in response. The plants swayed, the wind whispered through the cliffs, and the distant auroras glowed brighter than ever. Mira's laughter echoed through the cabin, small and musical, as she looked out at the horizon. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, but she smiled. This was not an ending, it was a beginning. Mira was carrying their lessons, their love, and the planet's quiet energy into the universe. She was a bridge, a teacher, and a reminder of what humanity could become when it embraced empathy and understanding. The shuttle ascended, gliding smoothly through the thin atmosphere. Lyra watched Vera 9 recede below them. Its cliffs, valleys, and glowing plants bathed in the soft light of the twin suns. The planet had been their sanctuary, their laboratory, and their home. But now, it was also a starting point for something far greater. A journey of discovery that Mira would lead. Kellen placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "She's ready," he said softly. "And so are we, in our own way. We've given her the foundation she needs to grow, to explore, to shine." Lyra nodded, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. Solitude had taught her discipline, patience, and observation. Connection had taught her empathy, trust, and courage. And Mira had shown them all that humanity's potential was not measured in isolation, but in the ability to understand, nurture, and harmonize with the life around them. The shuttle glided through space, the stars stretching infinitely beyond the windows. Mira sat quietly, glowing faintly, her hands tracing patterns that left soft trails of light in the cabin air. Lyra and Kellen watched, filled with wonder, knowing that the universe was vast, full of mysteries, and waiting for the child's gentle guidance. Hours passed in quiet observation. Mira's abilities continued to manifest subtly. Plants responded. Energy shifted. And even the shuttle seemed to harmonize with her presence. Lyra realized that this journey was only the beginning. The universe held countless unknown worlds, ecosystems, and life forms. And Mira, small yet extraordinary, would be the bridge humanity needed to understand them. As the shuttle approached the outskirts of a distant human colony, Lyra felt a mixture of anticipation and hope. Mira's presence would change everything, not through force, but through understanding, empathy, and the quiet power of life itself. The colony, the planet, and humanity itself would benefit from her influence. Mira reached out, touching Lyra's hand once more. The warmth, the glow, and the quiet energy that flowed between them spoke volumes. No words were necessary. Lyra knew that the bond they shared would remain, unbroken by distance or time. Kellen activated the shuttle's gentle landing sequence. The colony's welcoming lights shimmered in the distance, reflecting off the shuttle's polished surface. Mira's excitement was palpable, but she remained calm, her hands tracing patterns that seemed to prepare the environment itself for her arrival. Lyra and Kellen exchanged a glance. "She's ready," Lyra said softly. "And so are we." The shuttle touched down smoothly, the engines powering down. The colony awaited, curious and unknowing, but ready to witness the quiet brilliance of a child who could harmonize with life itself. Mira stepped forward, small yet radiant, guided by Kellen and supported by Lyra's unwavering presence. As the colony doors opened, the alien plants that Mira had brought along responded instantly, glowing softly in recognition of their new environment. Lyra felt a sense of peace. Mira was not just a child, she was a teacher, a guide, and a reminder of humanity's potential to understand, nurture, and harmonize with life everywhere. Lyra stepped back, watching as Mira took her first steps into the wider world. The child looked over her shoulder, eyes meeting Lyra's, and gave a small, radiant smile. It was a smile filled with promise, curiosity, and hope. Lyra felt tears of joy, knowing that the journey ahead would be extraordinary. The planet Vera 9 shimmered faintly in the background, a silent witness to the journey they had shared. And Lyra understood, finally, that solitude had taught her observation, connection had taught her empathy, and Mira had taught them all that humanity's greatest strength lay in understanding, nurturing, and harmonizing with life itself. As Mira disappeared into the colony, Lyra and Kellen watched, hearts full, knowing that this was not an ending. It was a beginning of discovery, hope, and the quiet, extraordinary power of connection. The universe awaited, and humanity, guided by empathy, wonder, and curiosity, was ready to meet it.